I've been rescued from a life of chaos on 3 occasions. Gunny Hopkins and Mrs. Hopkins rescued me twice, intervening at moments when my life was spiraling straight into the toilet. The third rescue came about in a completely different fashion, but it has every prospect of lasting a lifetime. My name is David Dare. Folks who know me well call me Davy. And if you told 6-year-old me that I'd one day have a family, a home, and people who actually gave a damn about whether I lived or died, I'd have laughed in your face, or maybe cried, probably both, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, the ugly beginning. The apartment on Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia smelled like mildew, cigarette smoke, and something else I couldn't name as a kid but would later recognize as despair. The walls were yellow from years of nicotine. The carpet had stains that told stories nobody wanted to hear. The furniture looked like it had been rescued from a dumpster, because most of it had been. This was home. If you could call it that, my mother was a ghost. She drifted in and out of my life like smoke, there one moment and gone the next. When she was around, I learned to read her eyes. Were they glassy and unfocused? That meant she'd used, and I needed to stay quiet, stay small, stay invisible. Were they sharp and desperate? That meant she needed money for her next fix, and things were about to get loud. I never knew my father. I'm not certain my mother even knew who my sperm donor was. If she did, she never told me or my grandmother. Some mysteries aren't worth solving. The only constant in those early years was Grandmom. She was a small woman with hands that always smelled like lavender lotion and a lap that felt like the safest place in the world. She taught me my letters using a worn picture book she'd found at a church rummage sale. She told me stories about princes and dragons and brave little boys who overcame impossible odds. She made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be one of those boys. "Davy," she'd say, smoothing my hair back from my forehead, "you're going to be somebody special someday. I can feel it in my bones." I believed her. Kids believe everything. For 6 years, Grandmom was my anchor. My mother would disappear for days, sometimes weeks, and Grandmom would simply fold me into her routine. Breakfast at 7. Educational shows on the little TV with the bent antenna. Lunch at noon. Reading practice in the afternoon. Dinner at 6. Bath at 8. Bed by 9. Structure, stability, love. I didn't know how precious those things were, not until they were ripped away. Grandmom died 3 days before I was supposed to start first grade. I didn't understand death. Not really. I knew she went to sleep and didn't wake up. I knew strangers came and took her away on a stretcher with a white sheet pulled over her face. I knew I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes felt like sandpaper. What I didn't know was that my whole world had just ended. With Grandmom gone, I had to live with my mother full-time. The woman who could barely take care of herself was now solely responsible for a 6-year-old boy. It lasted exactly 2 months and 3 days. I came home from school on a Thursday in October. The leaves were turning orange and red outside, and my teacher, Mrs. Gallagher, had taught us about the seasons. I was excited to tell Mom, or whatever version of Mom would be there, about how leaves change color because of something called chlorophyll. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. "Mom." No answer. I found her in the bedroom. She was lying on the bed, still in yesterday's clothes. There was a needle sticking out of her arm. Her eyes were half open, staring at nothing. "Mom, Mom, wake up." I shook her shoulder, nothing. "Mom." I shook harder, still nothing. Experience had taught me that sometimes she just needed to sleep it off. Sometimes she'd wake up groggy and confused but alive, so I waited. Day 1, I watched cartoons. I ate the last of the cereal, climbing on a chair to reach the cabinet. I checked on Mom every few hours. She hadn't moved. Day 2, the cereal was gone. I found some crackers and a can of beans I couldn't open. I tried to wake Mom again. Her skin felt cold. I covered her with a blanket and told myself she was just really, really tired. Day 3, I didn't go to school. I was too scared to leave her. I was too scared of what it meant that she wouldn't wake up. I curled up on the couch and waited for something to change. The knock on the door came around 2 in the afternoon. "Davy, Davy, are you in there? It's Mrs. Gallagher." I didn't want to open it. Strangers were bad. Strangers asked questions. But Mrs. Gallagher wasn't a stranger. She was my teacher. She had kind eyes and gave out gold star stickers. "Davy, I'm here with my husband. He's a police officer. We just want to make sure you're okay, sweetheart." I cracked the door open. Mrs. Gallagher's face crumpled when she saw me. I must have looked awful. 3 days without a bath, the same clothes I'd worn to school, dried tears on my cheeks. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "Can we come in?" I let them in because I didn't know what else to do. Mrs. Gallagher went to check on my mother while her husband, a big guy with a kind face, stayed with me in the living room. I heard her sharp intake of breath from the bedroom. "Tom," she called, her voice strange. "Tom, I need you in here." He patted my shoulder and went to join her. I heard murmured voices, a phone call, words I didn't understand then but would never forget. "Yes, deceased, looks like an overdose. There's a child here, about 6 years old." Deceased. That was the day I learned what death really meant. The people from Children and Youth Services arrived within the hour. A woman with tired eyes and a clipboard asked me questions I couldn't answer. Did I have any relatives? I didn't know. Did I know my father's name? I didn't know. Did I have anywhere to go? I didn't know. They let me take one thing from the apartment. I chose the teddy bear grandmom had given me for my 4th birthday. It was missing an eye and its stuffing was coming out at the seams, but it still smelled like her lavender lotion. As they led me out of the building, I looked back at the apartment one last time. The dirty windows, the cracked front door, the place where my mother had died while I watched cartoons and waited for her to wake up. "Come on, sweetie," the CYS woman said. "Let's find you somewhere safe." Safe. What a joke. I was about to enter the foster care system, and nothing about the next 8 years would be anything close to safe. They put me in the back of a sedan that smelled like fast food and air freshener. The CYS woman, Linda, I think her name was, made phone calls the entire drive. I clutched my teddy bear and watched Philadelphia slide past the window. Kensington gave way to nicer neighborhoods, then gave way to not-so-nice neighborhoods again. We ended up at an office building somewhere in North Philly where more people asked me more questions I couldn't answer. "We're going to find you a foster family, David," someone told me. "Just for a little while until we can figure things out." A little while. I didn't know then that a little while would stretch into 12 different homes over 8 years. I didn't know that I would change schools 9 times, never staying anywhere long enough to make real friends. I didn't know that I would see things no child should ever see and learn to survive in ways no child should ever have to learn. I didn't know that the system designed to protect me would nearly destroy me instead. All I knew was that grandmom was gone, mom was gone, and I was alone in a world that didn't want me. That night in a strange house with strange people, I buried my face in my teddy bear and cried myself to sleep. It would be the last time I cried for a very, very long time. Years later, a woman named Naomi Schieffer Riley wrote a book called No Way to Treat a Child. It's an indictment of the foster care system. My only problem with her conclusions is that she wasn't nearly harsh enough about how destructive that system is to a child trapped in it. I know, I lived it. Let me give you the numbers. From age 6 to age 14, I was placed with 12 different foster families. I attended 9 different schools. I never stayed anywhere longer than 11 months. I never had a birthday party. I never had a best friend. I never had anyone who looked at me and saw a person instead of a paycheck. That's not self-pity. That's just facts. The first family was the Richardsons in Frankfurt. They had 4 other foster kids and 2 biological children of their own. The biological kids had bedrooms. The foster kids shared a basement with 2 bunk beds and a space heater that barely worked. Mrs. Richardson was nice enough, I guess. She made sure we had food and clothes. But she had the look of a woman who was running on empty, stretched too thin between too many kids and not enough resources. Mr. Richardson worked nights and slept days. We learned quickly not to make noise when he was sleeping. The one time I accidentally dropped a plate in the kitchen, he came downstairs with a belt and a temper that left bruises on my backside for a week. I lasted 7 months with the Richardsons before Mr. Richardson lost his job, and they could no longer afford to foster. The second family was the Kowalskis. They lived in a nice house in Mayfair with a backyard and a dog named Buster. For 2 glorious weeks, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten lucky. Then I realized why the Kowalskis needed foster kids. Their son, Danny, was 16 and bored. He used the younger kids as entertainment. Nothing too extreme, just little tortures, hiding my teddy bear, putting bugs in my cereal, tripping me on the stairs and laughing when I fell. His parents thought he was an angel. Danny knew better than to leave marks. I lasted 4 months with the Kowalskis before Danny graduated to worse things with the older foster girl. She told someone at school. CYS removed all of us. I heard later that Danny got counseling and the Kowalskis were temporarily suspended from fostering. Temporarily. The system protects the system, never the kids. I could tell you about every family. The Baileys, who were genuinely kind but whose grandmother got sick and needed full-time care. The Thompsons, who ran their house like a military barracks and rationed food like we were in wartime. The Greens, who seemed normal until Mrs. Green's drinking problem surfaced and she started passing out on the kitchen floor. But here's the thing about foster care that nobody tells you. The moving around is almost worse than the bad families. Every time you start to settle, start to feel like maybe this place could be okay, something happens. The family runs out of money. The family has a crisis. The family decides you're too difficult or not a good fit or any of a dozen other excuses that really mean we don't want you anymore. So you learn to never unpack. I kept everything I owned in a trash bag under my bed, ready to go at a moment's notice. You learn to never get attached. That kid in class who wants to be your friend, don't bother. You'll be at a different school next semester anyway. You learn to read adults. Is this foster mom getting tired of me? Is this foster dad looking at me in a way that makes my skin crawl? Is this house about to implode? Survival skills, that's what foster care teaches you. Not how to be a functioning human being, just how to survive until you age out and the system is done with you. By the time I was 14, I was what they called a challenging placement. That was CYS code for nobody wants this kid. I wasn't violent, I wasn't a troublemaker, I was just difficult to reach. I'd learned that opening up meant getting hurt, so I kept everything locked down. Teachers thought I was sullen. Foster parents thought I was ungrateful. Other kids thought I was weird. I was just trying to survive. My caseworker, a woman named Patricia Gaines, who actually seemed to give a damn, called me into her office one August afternoon. "Davy, I've found a placement for you. There. Experienced. They've fostered before." Translation, they know what they're getting into with a kid like you. "Where?" I asked. "Norristown, nice area. You'll be starting high school there." New school, number 9. Lucky me. The family is the Petersons, Jim and Linda. Jim works in construction, Linda stays home. They have a biological son who's 18 and about to move out. She paused. They just had 2 foster kids age out. They're looking for a new placement. Red flag. Families that see foster kids as interchangeable are usually in it for the money. "Okay," I said. Because what else could I say? I arrived at the Peterson house on a Friday evening in late August, 3 weeks before my freshman year of high school. The house was a small Cape Cod in a working-class neighborhood. The lawn needed mowing. The paint was peeling. An American flag hung limply from a pole by the front door. Linda Peterson greeted me with a tired smile. She was a thin woman with faded blonde hair and nervous hands. "You must be David. Come in, come in." Jim Peterson was in the living room watching a baseball game. He didn't get up when I came in, just glanced at me with bloodshot eyes and turned back to the TV. I knew that look. I knew what it meant when a man's eyes were red-rimmed at 6 in the evening and there was a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels on the end table. My stomach tightened. "Your room is upstairs," Linda said. "Second door on the left, bathrooms at the end of the hall, dinner's at 7. I carried my trash bag of belongings upstairs and found a small room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the backyard. The walls were bare except for a wooden cross above the bed. I sat on the mattress and stared at that cross. Another house, another family, another fresh start that probably wouldn't end any better than the last one. I was so tired. 14 years old, and I was bone tired of fighting for my place in a world that didn't want me. 3 weeks later, Jim Peterson would beat me bloody because he lost his wallet and decided I must have stolen it. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew, sitting in that bare little room, was that I had to get through 4 more years of this. 4 more years until I turned 18 and the system spit me out. 4 more years until I was finally, truly alone, or so I thought. I had no idea that in just 3 weeks, a tiny woman with steel in her spine and a giant of a man with a heart of gold would change everything. But that's the next chapter. The morning that changed my life started with blood. Jim Peterson had been drinking since noon the day before. I know because I'd learned to track his alcohol consumption the way sailors track the weather. Light drinking meant irritability. Moderate drinking meant verbal abuse. Heavy drinking meant stay invisible or pay the price. That morning was heavy drinking territory. I was getting ready for school, my third week at Norristown Area High School, when Jim started yelling downstairs. "Where's MY goddamn wallet?" I froze with my toothbrush halfway to my mouth. "Jim, honey, calm down," Linda's voice, thin and nervous. "I'm sure it's around here somewhere." "I had it last night. Someone took it. Someone in this house took MY wallet." Heavy footsteps on the stairs. My heart started pounding. He appeared in the bathroom doorway. 61, 230 pounds, red-faced and reeking of whiskey. "You!" He pointed at me with a shaking finger. "Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about, sir." "Don't lie to me, boy. I know you people steal. It's in your blood." You people. I was white, same as him. But foster kids weren't people to Jim Peterson. We were you people. Charity cases, problems to be tolerated for the monthly check. "I didn't take your wallet." He moved fast for a drunk man. One moment he was in the doorway, the next his fist was connecting with my face. I went down hard, cracking my head on the edge of the bathtub. "Jim!" Linda screamed from somewhere far away, but Jim wasn't done. He dragged me into the hallway and started swinging. Fists, then his belt. I curled into a ball and protected my head the way I'd learned to do years ago with Danny Kowalski. When it was over, he was panting and I was bleeding. "Find my wallet," he growled. "Or there's more where that came from." He stumbled back downstairs. I heard the TV come on. Baseball, like nothing had happened. Linda appeared at the top of the stairs, wringing her hands. Are you okay, David?" I looked at her with my one good eye. The other was already swelling shut. "I'm fine," I said, because what else could I say? I cleaned myself up as best I could. Split lip, black eye, welts across my back that made my shirt stick to my skin. I pulled on a hoodie to hide the worst of it and walked to school. I had a meeting with my guidance counselor that morning, some kind of assessment for new students. I'd completely forgotten about it. Norristown Area High School was a sprawling brick building that had probably been impressive in the 1960s. Now it just looked tired, like everything else in my life. I kept my head down in the hallways, hood up, trying not to attract attention. My face throbbed with every heartbeat. First period was gym class. That's when I first saw him. The man standing at the front of the gymnasium looked like he could bench press a Buick. 64 of solid muscle, not an ounce of fat visible anywhere. His skin was dark brown, his head shaved smooth, and his eyes. God, his eyes could cut through steel. "Listen up," his voice echoed off the gymnasium walls like thunder. "I am Mr. Hopkins. You will call me Mr. Hopkins, not coach, not hey you, not dude. Mr. Hopkins, are we clear?" A mumbled chorus of "Yes, sir" rippled through the freshman class. "I can't hear you." "Yes, SIR." He nodded, satisfied. "Better. Now in this class you will learn discipline. You will learn respect. You will learn that your body is capable of more than you think. And if any of you gives me grief..." He paused, and I swear his gaze lingered on a group of guys who looked like troublemakers. "Well, let's just say I spent 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, and I know about 50 ways to make you regret your life choices without leaving a mark." Nobody laughed. I don't think anyone even breathed. "Now drop and give me 20. As I struggled through push-ups with my bruised ribs screaming, I learned something about Gunny Hopkins, because that's what everyone called him, even though he insisted on Mr. Hopkins in class. He was the most terrifying person I'd ever encountered. He was also, as I would soon discover, one of the best. After gym class, I reported to the guidance office as instructed. The secretary pointed me toward a door at the end of the hall. "Mrs. Hopkins will see you now." I stopped. "Hopkins, like Mr. Hopkins?" The secretary smiled. "His wife, don't let her size fool you. She's the one who wears the pants in that family." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I found out soon enough. Mrs. Hopkins was tiny. Maybe 52, on a good day, probably 110 pounds soaking wet. She had warm brown skin, graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when I entered, and her welcoming smile froze. "Sit down, David." I sat, automatically angling my chair so my good side faced her, a survival habit. "David." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Look at me, please." I turned, her eyes widened. "What happened to your face?" The lie came automatically. "I fell." "Bullshit." I blinked. Did this tiny grandmother-looking woman just curse at me? "Excuse me?" I said bullshit. She leaned forward, and suddenly she didn't look like a grandmother at all. She looked like a predator sizing up a threat to her cubs. Those injuries did not come from a fall. Someone hit you. Someone hit you multiple times. And you're going to tell me who, or I'm calling the police. She picked up her phone and started dialing. I watched her punch in 91, then hover her finger over the last digit. Who hit you, David? My mouth went dry. I'd been in this situation before. Tell the truth and get moved to another house. Keep quiet and face the devil you know. But something about this woman, something about the fierce protectiveness in her eyes. My foster father, I heard myself say. He thought I stole his wallet. He was drunk. Her jaw tightened. Where else did he hit you? My back. Stand up, turn around, lift your shirt. I did as she asked, wincing as the fabric pulled away from the welts. Mrs. Hopkins made a sound that might have been a growl. Sit down, David. Her voice was ice now. Don't move. She picked up the phone again, but didn't dial 911. George, I need you in my office, now. 2 minutes later, the door opened and Gunny Hopkins walked in. The room seemed to shrink around him. What's going on, Beverly? She pointed at me. Show him. I stood, turned, lifted my shirt. Gunny's silence was somehow more terrifying than his shouting had been in gym class. When I turned back around, his face was stone, but his eyes were murderous. Who did this? He asked quietly. Foster father, Mrs. Hopkins answered, drunk because he couldn't find his wallet. The silence stretched. I stood there waiting for whatever came next, probably a phone call to CYS. Probably another move, probably we're taking him. I blinked. What? Mrs. Hopkins nodded like this was exactly what she expected. We're still certified, the bedroom's available. Wait, I said. What are you talking about? Gunny Hopkins looked down at me, and for the first time his expression softened just a fraction. We've fostered before, son. Our niece, when her parents couldn't care for her, we know the drill. You're taking me today? Mrs. Hopkins picked up her phone again. That's exactly what we're doing. She started dialing. Hello, this is Beverly Hopkins at Norristown Area High School. I need to speak with someone about an emergency foster placement. Yes, I'll hold. I sank back into my chair, stunned. George, Mrs. Hopkins said while waiting, call Marcus. Tell him we might need backup when we go to collect David's things. Marcus, the cop who trains at your studio, the big one. Gunny nodded and pulled out his own phone. I sat there, watching these two strangers mobilize on my behalf like it was nothing. Like rescuing beaten foster kids was just another Tuesday. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Hopkins had somehow, through a combination of veiled threats, name-dropping a state senator, and sheer force of will, gotten emergency approval for my placement transfer. It helps that we're already in the system, she explained, hanging up, and that CYS knows better than to argue with me. Gunny returned. Marcus will meet us there at 3:30. Perfect. Mrs. Hopkins looked at me. David, you're going to finish your classes today like normal. After school, meet me here. We'll go get your things. My things? Whatever you want to keep from that house, clothes, personal items, whatever matters to you. What mattered to me? That was easy. My trash bag of clothes, my teddy bear, that was it. That was everything. At 3:30, I returned to the guidance office. Gunny was there along with a police officer who was almost as big as him, Marcus, I assumed. Both men looked like they were ready for a fight. Mrs. Hopkins grabbed her purse. Let's go. The drive to the Peterson house took 20 minutes. Nobody spoke. I sat in the back of Gunny's pickup truck and tried to process what was happening. These people didn't know me. They had no reason to help me, yet here they were driving to my foster home with a police escort to rescue me from a man who'd beaten me bloody that morning. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. We pulled up to the Peterson house. Jim's truck was in the driveway. Stay here until I wave you over, Gunny told me. He and Marcus walked up to the front door. Gunny knocked, the door opened. I saw Jim Peterson's face go pale when he saw the two massive men on his doorstep, one of them in uniform. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Jim's aggressive posture deflate. I saw Linda hovering in the background, wringing her hands. I saw Marcus casually rest his hand on his belt near his cuffs. Gunny turned and waved me over. I walked into that house one last time. Jim wouldn't look at me. Linda was crying quietly. I went upstairs, grabbed my trash bag, grabbed my teddy bear, and came back down. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. Is that everything? Gunny asked. I nodded. Then let's go home. Home. I climbed into Gunny's truck. Mrs. Hopkins was already in the passenger seat. As we pulled away from the Peterson house, I looked back through the rear window. Jim was standing on the porch, watching us go. I never saw him again. The Hopkins house was a tidy colonial in a nice neighborhood. 2 stories, red brick, white shutters. A small yard with actual grass that was actually mowed. "Your room is upstairs," Mrs. Hopkins said as we went inside. "First door on the right. Bathrooms across the hall." I carried my trash bag upstairs, expecting another bare room with a cross on the wall. Instead, I found a bedroom with blue walls, a comfortable-looking bed with an actual comforter, a desk with a lamp, a bookshelf with actual books, and curtains that matched the bedspread. On the bed was a towel, a washcloth, and a small bottle of shampoo. "Dinner's at 6, Mrs. Hopkins called from downstairs. "Take a shower and get some rest. We'll talk about everything later." I stood in the doorway of that room for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was 6 years old. I started to cry. Life with the Hopkins was like stepping into another dimension. The first morning, I woke to a knock on my door at 5:25 a.m. "Up and at 'em, son. Reveille in 5 minutes." I stumbled out of bed, disoriented. It was still dark outside. Back at the Petersons, I would have slept until 7 and snuck out before anyone else was awake. Downstairs, Gunny was in running shorts and a USMC t-shirt. "You own any athletic clothes?" I shook my head. I owned exactly 4 t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and the hoodie I'd worn yesterday. He disappeared into a closet and returned with a pair of shorts and a shirt that were only slightly too big. "We'll get you proper clothes this weekend. For now, these'll do. Let's go." "Go where?" "Running." At 5:30 in the morning. This was my life now. The first month was brutal. Every morning, Gunny dragged me out of bed for a 5-mile run. I couldn't finish the first one, or the second, or the 10th. But he never let me quit. He just slowed down, ran beside me, and kept me moving. "1 foot in front of the other, Davy. That's all you gotta do. 1 foot in front of the other." After school, I went to his martial arts studio, a small storefront in a strip mall called Hopkins Combat Arts. There, he taught me the basics of self-defense. Not to fight, he explained, to have confidence, to know that I could protect myself if I ever needed to. "A man who knows he can fight doesn't need to," he said. "That confidence changes how you carry yourself. And that changes how the world treats you." In the evenings, Mrs. Hopkins tackled a different problem, my education. "You're reading at a 5th grade level," she said after looking at my assessment scores. "Math is even worse. That stops now." She sat with me at the kitchen table every night for 2 hours, reading comprehension, basic algebra, world history. She was patient but relentless. When I got frustrated and wanted to give up, she wouldn't let me. "You are not stupid, David. You've just never had anyone care enough to teach you properly. That changes now." That changes now. That was Mrs. Hopkins' favorite phrase. Whatever was wrong, whatever was broken, that changes now. The first year, I didn't trust it. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Gunny to come home drunk and violent. For Mrs. Hopkins to get tired of me and call CYS. For something to go wrong because something always went wrong. But the shoe never dropped. The routine stayed the same. 5:30 a.m. runs, school, studio, homework, dinner as a family, actual conversations at the dinner table where they asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. Slowly, impossibly, I started to believe it might be real. By my sophomore year, I could run 5 miles without stopping. By junior year, I had my first belt in martial arts. By senior year, I was taking college prep classes and getting A's and B's. The scrawny, hollow-eyed kid who'd shown up with a trash bag and a teddy bear was gone. In his place was a young man of 510, 160 pounds of lean muscle with a 3.5 GPA and a future. A future. What a concept. I never called them Mom and Dad. It would have felt disrespectful somehow to my mother despite everything and to the relationship we'd built. They were Gunny and Mrs. H, that was enough. But they were my parents in every way that mattered. I learned about their family. Their 2 sons, Marcus and Jerome, were Marine officers, following in Gunny's footsteps. Their daughter, Tamara, was studying early childhood education. Their niece, Keisha, whom they'd fostered for years, was now married to a Marine NCO with 2 kids of her own. The Hopkins didn't just take in strays. They raised them into something better. I turned 18 on a Thursday in May, 3 weeks before graduation. Mrs. H baked a cake. Gunny gave me a card with a crisp $100 bill inside and a note that said, "For emergencies only, you've earned it." That night, after cake and ice cream and my first ever real birthday party, Gunny sat me down in the living room. "So," he said, "what's the plan?" I'd been thinking about this for months. "I want to be a Marine." He didn't react, just studied me with those sharp eyes. "You sure it's not a game, son? We're at war. Iraq, Afghanistan, you could get killed." "I know. You could get maimed, lose a leg, lose your mind." "I know, and you still want to go." "Yes, sir." A long silence. Then Gunny nodded. "Okay, then. We've got a month before you ship to Paris Island. I'm going to make damn sure you don't embarrass me in front of my old buddies who are drill instructors there." That month was the hardest training of my life. Harder than anything Paris Island would throw at me. Gunny ran me into the ground, built me back up, and ran me into the ground again. When I finally boarded the bus for South Carolina, I was as ready as I'd ever be. I won't lie, boot camp wasn't easy, but after 4 years with Gunny, it felt almost manageable. I graduated with honors. I carried the company guidon in the graduation parade. And there in the stands were Gunny and Mrs. H watching me, proud of me. I'd never had anyone be proud of me before. The Marine Corps became my second family. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan, made corporal, then sergeant. I led men into firefights and brought most of them home. I learned that the brotherhood Gunny always talked about was real, forged in blood and sand and the ever-present threat of death. But war takes its toll, and on my final deployment the bill came due. We were escorting our battalion commander to a village near Kandahar. Some hearts and minds mission about building a clean water project. 3 vehicles, my squad in front, the BC and his staff in the middle, another squad bringing up the rear. We were 2 clicks from base when the RPG hit. Not our vehicle. The middle one, the one with the battalion commander. Contact left. I was screaming before I even knew what was happening. "Dismount! Suppressive fire!" My squad piled out, laying down a wall of lead toward the tree line where the shot had come from. The middle vehicle was on fire. I didn't think. I just ran. The BC was in the passenger seat, dazed but alive. I grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He was a big man, probably 200 pounds with his gear, but adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I got him clear, went back, grabbed one of his staff officers, got him clear, went back, grabbed another. The vehicle was fully engulfed now. The heat was incredible, but there was one more person inside. The explosion picked me up and threw me like a rag doll. I hit something hard, a low wall I found out later, and everything went black. I woke up on a medevac helicopter. A corpsman was working on my legs, which were screaming with pain. "Stay with me, Sergeant, you're gonna be okay." I passed out again. The damage assessment came in Germany, 2nd and degree burns on both legs, multiple shrapnel wounds, 2 broken ribs. Compound fracture of my right tibia and fibula, mild traumatic brain injury from hitting the wall, and eventually a Navy Cross for Valor, a Purple Heart, a 40% disability rating, a medical discharge, a one-way ticket home. I arrived at the Philadelphia airport on a cold January afternoon. Gunny and Mrs. H were waiting at arrivals. I walked toward them on legs that still hurt with every step. I was alive, I was broken, I had no idea what came next. Mrs. H hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack again. Gunny shook my hand, then pulled me into a hug too. "Welcome home, son," he said. "Welcome home." That night, after a home-cooked meal that made the mess hall seem like prison food, Mrs. H asked me the question that would change my life again. "So, David, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?" I was 22 years old. I had a medal, a limp, and no marketable skills. But sitting at that familiar kitchen table in the house that had saved me once before, an idea began to form. "I want to go to college," I said slowly. "I want to become a teacher, a history teacher, like—" I hesitated. "Like you, Gunny." "I want to help kids the way you helped me," Mrs. H smiled. "Then that's what you'll do," Gunny nodded. "There's money, the fund I made you contribute to while you were enlisted, plus your GI Bill benefits, plus your disability. It's doable." It was doable. For the first time since the explosion, I felt something that might have been hope. I didn't know it then, but college would bring me face to face with another broken soul. A woman named Vera, who carried walls even higher than mine had ever been. But that's another chapter entirely. The state college campus sprawled across 200 acres of manicured lawns and red brick buildings about an hour from the Hopkins house. I could have lived in the dorms. Could have been a normal college student at 22, but I wasn't normal. I was a combat veteran with scars on my legs and nightmares that still woke me up screaming. The last thing I needed was an 18-year-old roommate asking me why I was crying in my sleep. So I rented a small apartment 15 minutes walk from campus. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchenette, and a living room barely big enough for a couch and a TV. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mrs. H had helped me apply. Gunny had made sure I'd saved enough from my military pay to afford it. The GI Bill covered tuition. My disability pension covered rent. I was, for the first time in my life, financially independent. Emotionally, that was another story. College was lonely. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was how much it would bother me. At 22, I was 4 years older than most of my classmates. They talked about high school parties and prom dates. I thought about firefights and IEDs. They worried about whether their fake IDs would work at the campus bar. I worried about whether the backfiring car outside my window was actually a car or something else. I didn't fit in. I didn't try to. I went to class. I studied. I worked out. I called Gunny and Mrs. H twice a week. I kept my head down and focused on my goal, become a history teacher, make a difference. Pay forward what the Hopkins had given me. Simple plan, should have been simple execution. Then I met Vera. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early September. Introduction to Biology, a required course for my education degree. The lecture hall held about 60 students, and I'd chosen a seat in the back corner where I could see all the exits. Old habits. The professor, a tired-looking man in his 50s, was wrapping up his overview of the syllabus. "One more thing," he said. "This course has a weekly 3-hour lab component. You'll need a partner. I suggest you find one today because I'm assigning permanent lab pairs next week." Immediately, the room erupted in chatter. Students turned to their friends, forming pairs. Within 30 seconds, it seemed like everyone had someone, everyone except me, and one other person. She was sitting a few rows ahead of me, alone in a sea of paired-up students. Brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, oversized hoodie that swallowed her frame. She hadn't turned to talk to anyone, hadn't even looked up from her notebook. All right, the professor said. "Anyone without a partner, raise your hand." I raised mine, so did she. "You too." He pointed at us. "Congratulations, you're lab partners. Exchange information before you leave." The girl still didn't turn around. I grabbed my bag and walked down the center aisle to her row. She was packing up her things with quick, efficient movements. "Hi," I said. "I'm Davy Dare." She looked up at me and just stared, no greeting, no smile, no acknowledgement that I'd spoken at all. Just a flat, assessing gaze that made me feel like I was being evaluated for threats. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself for most of my childhood. "We need to exchange contact info," I continued, keeping my voice neutral. "Phone number, email," more staring. "Look, we're going to be spending 3 hours a week together for the whole semester. I'm not going to bite. I just need a way to contact you about lab stuff." Finally, she spoke. Her voice was flat, expressionless. "Vera McDonald, 555-147. She rattled off an email address, then stood and walked away without another word. I watched her go, intrigued despite myself. Vera McDonald was going to be a challenge. The first lab session confirmed my suspicions. Vera was brilliant. She knew the material cold, followed instructions precisely, and completed her portion of the work in half the time it took me. She was also completely closed off. In 3 hours of sitting next to her, I learned exactly nothing about her life. "So," I tried during a lull in the experiment, "what's your major?" "Accounting." "Cool, I'm doing history and education." "Want to be a high school teacher?" No response. "You from around here?" "Nothing." "Okay, we don't have to talk, that's fine." We worked in silence for the next hour. This became our pattern. Every Tuesday, 3 hours of silence broken only by necessary lab-related communication. I'd try to start conversations. She'd shut them down. Eventually, I stopped trying. It wasn't hostility, I realized after a few weeks. It was something else. Something I recognized from my own years in foster care. Vera wasn't being rude, she was being careful. She had walls up, walls so high and thick that I couldn't even see over them. Whatever had happened to her, she decided that letting people in was too dangerous. I understood that. I'd been the same way once. The difference was, someone had eventually broken through my walls. Two someones, actually. Gunny and Mrs. H. Vera, I suspected, had never had her Gunny and Mrs. H. The breakthrough came in mid-November, right before Thanksgiving break. I was chatting with the guy at the next lab station, Derek, a talkative sophomore who'd somehow decided I was worth befriending despite my standoffish demeanor. "So what are you doing for Thanksgiving?" he asked. "Going to my foster parents' house," I said. "They live about an hour away, haven't seen them since the semester started." "Foster parents? That's cool that you're still close with them." "Yeah, they're basically my parents at this point. Saved my life, honestly." I heard a sharp intake of breath behind me. When I turned, Vera was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Shock, recognition, something that might have been hope. "You're a foster kid?" she asked. First question she'd ever asked me that wasn't about the lab. "Was," I said carefully. "Aged out at 18, but yeah, I was in the system from 6 to 14. Then the Hopkins took me in." "How many homes?" 12 schools. 9. Vera's face did something complicated. For a moment the wall cracked just a little and I saw something raw underneath. "I was in foster care from age 2, she said quietly. "My dad disappeared. My mom died of cancer when I was a toddler. No relatives would take me." She paused. "I bounced around like a pinball, never got adopted. Just aged out and got lucky enough to get a scholarship here." "What's your major again?" "Accounting." "Why accounting?" For the first time, something like a smile flickered across her face. "The world always needs bean counters, stable jobs, good salaries. I'll never have to worry about where my next meal is coming from." Security, financial security, that's what she was chasing. I understood that completely. "Good plan," I said. "Smart." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once and turned back to her work. It wasn't much, but it was a start. After lab, I gathered my courage. "Hey, Vera, you want to grab something to eat? I'm starving." She hesitated. "I can't really afford to eat out. My meal plan only covers the dining hall." My treat. One foster kid to another. "You can pay me back when you're a rich accountant." Another hesitation. Then slowly she nodded. We went to a cheap pizza place near campus. Over pepperoni and bad beer, for me, she ordered water. Vera told me more about herself than she had in the entire semester. The foster care horrors, the caseworker who actually cared. The high school teacher who'd pushed her toward college, the scholarship that was her ticket out. She didn't tell me everything, the wall was still there. But she let me see glimpses of what was behind it, and what I saw was a survivor. Someone who had clawed her way out of the same pit I'd escaped, but without the lifeline the Hopkins had thrown me. "You know what I've never had?" she said suddenly, staring at her pizza. "What?" "Someone who stayed. Everyone leaves eventually. Parents, foster families, caseworkers, teachers, everyone." She looked up at me. "I learned a long time ago not to get attached." "I get that," I said. "I was the same way before the Hopkins." "What changed?" I thought about it. "They didn't give up on me. Everyone else had. But they just wouldn't let go. Eventually, I stopped waiting for them to leave." Vera was quiet for a long moment. "That must be nice," she finally said. "Having people who won't let go." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and ordered another pizza. After that night, things changed. We started studying together, library sessions that stretched for hours. I'd help her with the humanities courses she struggled with. She'd help me survive statistics. We grabbed meals together when our schedules aligned. I discovered that Mrs. H's cooking lessons had stuck with me, so I started inviting Vera to my apartment for home-cooked dinners. She always accepted. I suspected her dining hall meals were pretty grim. Through it all, I was careful not to push too hard. I never touched her, not even to help her with her coat. I never asked about the foster care details I could tell she wasn't ready to share. I let her set the pace. And slowly, gradually, the wall got lower. By mid-semester, I knew her favorite color, blue, her favorite food, anything Mexican, her favorite movie, The Shawshank Redemption. "It's about getting out," she'd said. I knew she hated mornings, loved autumn, and could recite tax code like poetry. What I didn't know, what I was only beginning to suspect, was that somewhere along the way I'd started falling for her. Stupid, right? The closed-off foster kid with walls higher than mine had ever been. The woman who flinched when people got too close. The person who'd explicitly told me she didn't get attached. Yeah, I was falling for her anyway, stupid as that sounds. Christmas break crept up on me. I'd been so focused on finals that I hadn't thought about the logistics. The dorms closed for 3 weeks, a week before Christmas, a week after New Year. I was planning to spend most of the break at my apartment, getting ahead on next semester's reading, maybe spending Christmas Day with the Hopkins. I hadn't thought about what Vera would do. The knock on my door came at 8 p.m. on the Friday the dorms closed. When I opened it, Vera was standing there with a garbage bag full of clothes. Her face was doing that careful, controlled thing it did when she was trying not to show emotion. "Can I stay here?" she asked. "They closed the dorms tonight and I don't have money for a hotel." I stared at her for a full 3 seconds while my brain caught up. "You idiot," I said, to myself, not her. "I should have asked you days ago. Of course you can stay. Get in here." "You can have the bed," I told her, grabbing spare sheets from the closet. "I'll take the couch. I've fallen asleep on it plenty of times watching TV. Vera shook her head. "I'm not putting you out of your own bed." "It's fine, really. Davy." She met my eyes. "We can share. I trust you. We're both foster kids." "We've both probably shared beds before." She had a point. Foster care meant you got used to sharing space. It didn't mean anything, except I'd been fantasizing about this woman for weeks and sharing a bed with her was going to be torture. "Okay," I heard myself say, "if you're sure." That first night was awkward. I'd been sleeping in boxers and a t-shirt, but that felt too intimate now. I dug out a pair of sweatpants and pulled them on over my boxers. The combined layers would hopefully hide any reactions. Vera emerged from the bathroom in a thin t-shirt and tiny shorts. Oh God, she wasn't wearing a bra, that was obvious, and the shorts were practically underwear. I rolled onto my side, facing away from her, clinging to the edge of the mattress. Think about baseball. Think about the Marine Corps. Think about anything except the beautiful woman inches away from you. "Good night, Davy," she said softly. "Night," I managed. I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the realization that I was spooning Vera. My arm was draped over her waist. My hand was cupping her breast. And I was pressed against her backside in a way that left absolutely no doubt about my physical state. I froze. "You're awake," Vera said. She didn't sound upset. "I've been up for a while." "I'm so sorry," I tried to pull back. "I didn't mean to." She turned in my arms and looked at me. Her eyes were soft in a way I'd never seen before. "It's okay. It felt nice, actually. I don't think anyone's ever just held me like that, snuggled with me." She paused. "I could get used to it." Then she kissed me. Her lips were soft, warm. She tasted like morning breath and something sweet underneath. I kissed her back automatically, my brain short-circuiting. When she pulled back, she was breathing hard. So was I. Then she sat up and pulled her t-shirt over her head. I stopped breathing entirely. "Vera," she straddled me, leaning down to kiss me again. Her bare chest pressed against mine. Her hips moved in a way that made me groan. This was happening. This was actually happening, and I had to stop it. "Wait." I put my hands on her shoulders, gently pushing her back. "Stop. We need to stop." Vera froze. Confusion flickered across her face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. You're beautiful. I want this. God, you have no idea how much I want this." I took a breath. "But not like this." "Like what?" "Like you're paying me back for letting you stay here, like this is a transaction." I met her eyes. "I know how it works in foster care. Sex as currency. Sex as survival. I'm not going to be that for you." Vera stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "If we do this," I continued, "I want it to be because you actually want a relationship with me, not because you feel obligated, not because it's easier than saying no. I care about you too much to be a hookup or a one-night stand." The silence stretched between us. "Nobody's ever said no to me before," Vera finally said. "Then you've been sleeping with the wrong people." She laughed, a short, surprised sound. Then she climbed off me, retrieved her shirt, and walked into the bathroom. I lay there, aching in multiple ways, wondering if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. The next few days were tense. Vera was polite but distant. We moved around each other carefully, like roommates who'd had a fight. I gave her space. She took it. 3 days before Christmas, I made a decision. "I'm going to the Hopkins for Christmas dinner," I told her. "They said you're welcome to come." She looked up from her textbook. "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. Mrs. H specifically said the more the merrier." I paused. "Please come. I don't want you to spend Christmas alone." Another long silence. Then she nodded. On the way to the Hopkins house, I stopped at a jewelry store. Nothing fancy. I couldn't afford fancy, but I found a delicate necklace with a small heart-shaped pendant. $20 on clearance. $20 for the gift that would change everything. At the Hopkins house, Vera was quiet but not closed off. She answered Mrs. H's gentle questions. She listened to Gunny's stories about his Marine days. She ate 3 helpings of Mrs. H's famous honey-glazed ham. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for presents. I hadn't planned anything elaborate, just a small wrapped box for Vera tucked into my jacket pocket. "This is for you," I said, handing it to her. She looked at the box like it might bite her. "You didn't have to, just open it." She did. When she saw the necklace, she went very still. Then her eyes filled with tears. Her voice cracked. "This is the first Christmas present I've ever gotten that wasn't from a charity or a foster care agency." Before I could respond, she launched herself into my lap and kissed me. Not a polite kiss, not a thank you kiss. A real kiss, deep and desperate and filled with something I'd never felt from her before. When she finally pulled back, Gunny and Mrs. H were carefully looking elsewhere, pretending they hadn't seen. "Davy," Vera whispered, her forehead pressed against mine. "I want to have a real relationship. With you, I mean it." "Are you sure?" She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "You're the first person who ever said no to me, the first person who wanted more than just my body." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know if I know how to love someone, but I want to try, with you." I kissed her again, softer this time. "Then we'll figure it out together." That night, back at my apartment, Vera led me to the bedroom. This time, I didn't say no. Vera never moved back to the dorms. When the spring semester started, we officially became a couple. She kept her dorm room on paper, the scholarship required it, but she spent every night at my apartment. Her toothbrush joined mine in the bathroom. Her clothes took over half my closet. Her textbooks colonized my desk. Gunny and Mrs. H had reservations, I could tell. "Are you sure about this girl?" Mrs. H asked me privately during one of my visits. "You've only known her a few months." "I know her," I said. "You know what she's shown you. There's a difference." I bristled. "She's had a hard life, harder than mine in some ways. She needs time to open up completely." Mrs. H studied me with those penetrating eyes. "Just make sure she loves you for you, David, not for the safety you represent." "There's a difference there, too." I told myself she was wrong. Vera loved me. She said so, or at least she said she was trying to learn how. That was enough. It had to be enough. 3.5 years flew by. Vera graduated top of her class with a degree in accounting. She got recruited by one of the Big Four firms, the kind of job offer that makes professors use you as an example for future students. Starting salary that made my teacher's pay look like pocket change. I graduated with my degrees in history and education. Found a job at a suburban high school teaching freshmen and sophomores. The pay was modest, the hours were long, but I loved it. Every time I reached a struggling kid, I thought about Mrs. H reaching me. We got married the summer after graduation, small wedding, just the Hopkins and a handful of friends. Mrs. H was matron of honor. Gunny was my best man. At the reception, Gunny handed me a card with a check inside, the total amount of foster care payments they'd received for my care, saved for this moment. "For your future," he said, "whatever that looks like." I used it as the down payment on a house. The house was a small Cape Cod near a SEPTA train line, so Vera could commute to her job in Center City, Philadelphia. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small backyard. It was Vera who insisted on the specific house. "We can afford more," I pointed out. "Your salary, we should buy something you can afford on just your income," she said firmly, "in case something happens to me." "Like what?" "I don't know, job loss, illness, anything," she shrugged. "I just want to know you'd be okay if I wasn't contributing anymore." It was a strange thing to say. But I chalked it up to her foster care background, the need for contingency plans, exit strategies, safety nets. I understood that need even if mine had faded since the Hopkins. Vera's apparently hadn't. We were happy, mostly. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed. The little things that should have told me Vera wasn't as settled as she seemed. She kept a separate savings account. "Just in case," she said when I asked about it. She never fully relaxed around me, even after years together. There was always a part of her held back, a wall I could never quite scale. When I said, "I love you," she usually replied, "I know," instead of saying it back. I told myself it was enough. She showed love in other ways, cooking my favorite meals, remembering small details about my day, making sure I never worried about finances. Actions over words. That's how some people expressed love. That's what I told myself. 4.5 years into our marriage, Vera got assigned to the biggest case of her career. "It's huge," she told me over dinner. "Potential billion-dollar fraud. Defense contractor overbilling the government. If we prove it, it could make my career." "That's amazing, babe. There's a catch. The whistleblower is located at the contractor's headquarters in Ohio. I'll need to travel a lot. How much is a lot? 2, 3 weeks at a time, maybe longer. I didn't love it, but I understood. This was her shot at partner, the financial security she'd been chasing her whole life. Do what you need to do, I said. I'll be here when you get back. She kissed me, deeply, intensely. Thank you for understanding, she whispered. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. The travel started in January. Vera would leave on Sunday evenings and return 2 or 3 weeks later. We talked every day, phone calls, texts, video chats when she wasn't too exhausted. She'd give me updates on the case, tell me about the long hours, complain about hotel food. The nights before she left were always intense. She'd pull me into the bedroom with an urgency that bordered on desperation, like she was trying to store up enough intimacy to last until her return. And the nights she came back were the same, frantic, passionate, as if she'd been starving and I was the only thing that could fill her. I missed you, she'd gasp against my neck. I missed you so much. I thought it was love. Maybe it was guilt. That spring, we started talking about having children. I've been thinking, Vera said one night, maybe I should stop taking my birth control. My heart nearly stopped. Really? She nodded. I know I've been hesitant. The idea of being responsible for another human being terrifies me, but she took my hand. I think I'm ready. I think we're ready. You have no idea how happy that makes me. She smiled, a real smile, rare and precious. Let's see what happens. She stopped taking her pills that week. 3 months later, she was gone. The whistleblower's name was Richard Wilson. I didn't know that then. Vera mentioned him occasionally. Richard found another discrepancy today, or Richard's testimony is going to be key. But he was just a name, a coworker, part of the job. What I didn't know was that Richard was falling in love with my wife. I would learn all of this later, pieced together from documents and depositions and Vera's own words. At the time, I was blissfully ignorant. Richard was 33 years old, a senior accountant at the defense contractor. Meticulous, principled, the kind of man who noticed when numbers didn't add up. He'd stumbled across payments to a subcontractor that didn't exist, dug deeper, and uncovered a billion-dollar fraud. The executives behind it had connections, money, power. When Richard filed his whistleblower complaint, they tried to destroy him. Smear campaigns, legal threats. When that didn't work, they tried more direct methods. 3 assassination attempts in 6 months. That's when the FBI stepped in. They offered Richard witness protection, a new identity, a new life, complete disappearance from his old existence. He agreed on one condition. Vera had to come with him. I didn't see it coming. Looking back, there were signs. The way Vera talked about Richard changed over those months, more familiar, more invested. Richard thinks, and Richard said, peppered her conversations in ways that should have raised flags, but I trusted her. Completely, absolutely trusted her. That was my mistake. The last night we spent together, Vera was insatiable. She initiated the moment I got home from work, pulled me into the bedroom. Made love to me with an intensity I'd never experienced before, desperate, almost frantic, like she was trying to memorize every inch of me. Afterward, lying tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, she traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. I love you, she said, not I know, not deflection, actual words. It was the first time she'd said them unprompted in years. I love you too, I replied. Are you okay? You seem. I'm fine, she kissed me. I just wanted you to know, whatever happens, I love you. Whatever happens, what's going to happen? Nothing, just life is unpredictable. I wanted to say it while I could. I should have pushed, should have asked more questions, but I was exhausted and happy and she was warm against me and I let myself drift off to sleep. When I woke up, she was already dressed for work. Early flight, she said, kissing my forehead. I'll call you tonight. Love you. Love you too. The door closed behind her. I never saw her again. The first day I wasn't worried. Travel days were always hectic. Sometimes she couldn't call until late. The second day I texted her. No response. The third day I called, straight to voicemail. Hey babe, just checking in. Everything okay? Call me when you get this. No call back. Day 4 I called her office. I'm trying to reach Vera Dare. She's on the whistleblower audit team. Pause, typing sounds. Mrs. Dare is on vacation leave. Can someone else help you? Vacation leave. There must be a mistake. She left for Ohio 4 days ago. Business trip. Our records show she submitted vacation paperwork last week. I'm sorry I can't give you more information than that. I hung up with shaking hands. Something was very, very wrong. I filed a missing persons report that afternoon. The cops were sympathetic but not particularly concerned. "She's an adult, Mr. Dare. Are you sure she didn't just need some space?" "We didn't fight. We were happy. We were trying to have a baby, for God's sake. Sometimes people leave without warning. Have you checked with friends, family?" "She doesn't have family. Her friends are my friends. No one's heard from her. Give it a few more days, most people turn up." Vera didn't turn up. The investigation hit dead end after dead end. Her phone disconnected. Her credit cards, no activity since the morning she left. Our bank accounts untouched. Her work laptop, returned to her office, wiped clean. The security cameras outside her building showed her leaving at 6:47 a.m., getting into a black SUV with temporary plates. The plates were fake. The SUV was untraceable. It was like she'd walked out our front door and vanished into thin air. A 21st century Judge Crater, the cops called her, gone without a trace. The weeks blurred together. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped showing up to work until the school district gently suggested I take a leave of absence. I became convinced something terrible had happened. Kidnapping, murder. Vera would never leave me voluntarily. We were happy. We were trying for a baby. She'd said she loved me. She wouldn't just disappear unless she had. The cops didn't say it outright, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought she'd run. Thought I was the sad, deluded husband who couldn't accept that his wife had left him. I started drinking, just a little at first, a glass of whiskey to help me sleep. Then 2 glasses, then half a bottle. Then whole bottles night after night, trying to drown the questions that wouldn't stop. Where is she? Is she alive? Did she leave me? Why? The questions had no answers, so I drank to make them stop. By July, I was barely functional. The house was a disaster, takeout containers, empty bottles, dirty clothes piled everywhere. I hadn't showered in a week, hadn't shaved in a month. Hadn't talked to Gunny or Mrs. H in weeks. I was drowning, and I didn't care enough to swim. The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I ignored it. Knocking, loud. I ignored that too. Then came the voice, the loudest, angriest voice I'd ever heard from the man I considered my father. "GODDAMMIT Marine, open this fucking door right now." I sat up so fast I nearly fell off the couch. In 14 years, I had never heard Gunny Hopkins raise his voice outside of a training context. Never heard him curse. Never heard that particular tone of fury and fear. I stumbled to the door and opened it. Gunny stood on my porch, fists clenched, eyes blazing. Behind him, Mrs. H's car idled in the driveway. He took one look at me, the beard, the bloodshot eyes, the stench of alcohol and despair, and his expression shifted from anger to something worse. Disappointment. "What in God's name happened here?" he asked quietly. And finally, for the first time since Vera disappeared, I started to cry. Gunny didn't say a word. He stepped past me into the house, and I watched his face change as he took in the full scope of the disaster. The pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, some with moldy remains still inside. The empty whiskey bottles lined up like soldiers along the kitchen counter. The pile of unopened mail by the door. The smell, God, even I could smell it, and I'd been living in it for weeks. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists, but when he turned back to me, his eyes weren't angry anymore. They were sad. "Oh, son," he said quietly. "What have you done to yourself?" I couldn't answer. The tears were still coming, and now that they'd started, I couldn't seem to stop them. All the grief I'd been drowning in whiskey came pouring out in ugly, heaving sobs. Gunny crossed the room in 3 steps and wrapped his arms around me. He smelled like Old Spice and clean laundry and everything I'd forgotten about having a family. "It's okay," he murmured. "We've got you. It's going to be okay." After a few minutes, he pulled back and gripped my shoulders. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go upstairs and take a shower. I don't care if you have to sit in the tub and let the water run over you. You're getting clean." "Gunny, that wasn't a request, Marine." Old habits kicked in. "Yes, sir. While you're doing that, I'm calling Beverly. She'll get some people over here to clean this place up. Then you're coming home with me." "I can't just leave." "Yes, you can. You're not staying here another night." "Not like this." His voice softened slightly. "We almost lost you once, Davy, in Afghanistan. I'm not losing you to a bottle of Jack Daniels." I didn't have the energy to argue. I just nodded and trudged upstairs. The shower was brutal. I stood under the hot water for what felt like hours, watching weeks of grime and despair swirl down the drain. At some point, I realized I was still wearing my t-shirt and boxers. I'd been too out of it to undress before getting in. I stripped them off and threw them over the shower curtain. Then I just stood there, letting the water beat against my back, trying to remember the last time I'd felt human. When I finally emerged, there was a fresh set of clothes on the bathroom counter, my own clothes, but clean and folded. Gunny must have found them somewhere in the disaster zone of my bedroom. I got dressed and looked at myself in the mirror for the first time in weeks. I looked like death, hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, a beard that had gone past rugged and into homeless. But I was clean. That was something. Downstairs, Gunny was on the phone. Yeah, she's sending the Hendersons over. They'll get the worst of it tonight and Beverly will come by tomorrow to do a deeper clean. He paused. I know, we should have come sooner. He hung up and turned to me. Pack a bag, just the essentials. We're leaving in 10 minutes. What about the house? It'll be here when you're ready to come back, which won't be for a while. He fixed me with that drill instructor stare. You understand? You're staying with us until you're back on your feet. No arguments. No arguments, I agreed. I didn't have any fight left in me anyway. The drive to the Hopkins house took 45 minutes. Neither of us spoke for the first half hour. Finally, Gunny broke the silence. You want to tell me what happened? I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. She's gone. Vera, just gone, vanished, 4 months ago, no note, no warning, nothing. One day she was here and the next. I trailed off. The police think she left voluntarily, or that something terrible happened and they'll never find the body. Either way, they've basically given up. Gunny was quiet for a moment. What do you think happened? I don't know, my voice cracked. That's the worst part. I don't know if she's dead or alive. I don't know if she left me or was taken. I don't know if I should be grieving or angry or hopeful or... I broke off, shaking my head. I just don't know anything. So you decided to drink yourself to death instead of dealing with it. It wasn't a question. I wasn't trying to die, I was just trying to stop thinking for a while. And how'd that work out for you? I didn't answer. We both knew how it had worked out. Mrs. H was waiting on the front porch when we pulled into the driveway. She was in her bathrobe, her gray hair loose around her shoulders, and she looked exactly like what I needed, a mother. She didn't say anything, just opened her arms. I walked into that hug and held on like I was drowning, because I was. It's all right, baby, she murmured. You're home now, you're safe. We stayed like that for a long time. They put me in my old room. The same room I'd had as a teenager with the same blue walls and the same desk where I'd done homework while Mrs. H tutored me. It felt like stepping back in time, like none of the last 10 years had happened. Maybe that was the point. Get some sleep, Gunny said from the doorway. Reveille is at 5:30, I blinked. What? We're starting over, son. Same program that worked before. 5:30 a.m. runs. Training at the studio, structure, discipline, purpose. He paused. You got yourself out of a pit once. You can do it again, but you're going to need help this time, and that's okay. I'm not 18 anymore, Gunny. No, you're 31 and you're stronger than you were then. You just forgot. He reached for the light switch. 5:30, don't make me come wake you up. The light went off. The door closed. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in 4 months, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. The next morning was brutal. I'd been drinking heavily for months and hadn't run in just as long. My legs felt like lead. My lungs burned after the first half mile. I had to stop twice to throw up. Gunny didn't slow down. He just ran beside me, matching my pathetic pace, keeping me moving. 1 foot in front of the other, he said, same thing he'd told me 20 years ago. That's all you gotta do. We made it 2 miles before I collapsed on someone's lawn, gasping for breath. Gunny stood over me, not even winded. That was pathetic. I know. We'll do 3 miles tomorrow. I'll probably die. Then you'll die trying. Get up. We're walking the rest of the way home. The summer passed in a blur of pain and sweat and gradual recovery. Mornings, running with Gunny, the distances increased slowly. 2 miles became 3, 3 became 4. By August, I was back to 5 miles without stopping. Afternoons, training at the martial arts studio. Gunny worked me harder than he had when I was a teenager. I came home bruised and exhausted every day. I slept better than I had in years. Evenings, talking with Mrs. H, she'd enrolled me in the school district's employee assistance program, and I was seeing a counselor twice a week. But the real therapy happened at her kitchen table over cups of tea, talking through everything I'd been avoiding. Vera, the marriage, the signs I should have seen, the guilt, the anger, the grief. "You're allowed to be angry at her," Mrs. H said one night. "Even if something terrible happened, you're allowed to feel betrayed. But what if she didn't have a choice? What if someone took her? Then you're allowed to be angry at whoever took her, but you're also allowed to acknowledge that there were problems in your marriage before she disappeared. Both things can be true." I stared at my tea. "She never loved me the way I loved her, did she?" Mrs. H was quiet for a moment. "I don't know what was in Vera's heart, but I know that damaged people love differently than whole people. And Vera was very damaged. So was I, yes, but you had us, she never had anyone." By Christmas, I was mostly back to my old self. I'd returned to work in September. My colleagues were kind. They'd heard about my wife's disappearance, though they didn't know the details. The students didn't know anything was wrong. Kids are resilient that way. They just saw Mr. Dare, their history teacher, same as always. The house was clean now. Mrs. H had supervised a deep cleaning while I was recovering, and I'd been maintaining it ever since. It still felt empty without Vera, but it no longer felt like a tomb. I wasn't drinking, hadn't touched alcohol since the night Gunny showed up. Some days were harder than others, but I had tools now. Coping strategies, a support system, I was surviving, but there was still a hole in my heart where Vera used to be, a hole that no amount of running or training or talking could fill. I learned to live with it, learned to carry the questions that would never have answers. Where was she? Was she alive? Did she ever think about me? I didn't know. I might never know. That had to be okay. 5 years passed. 5 years of teaching. 5 years of training at the studio. 5 years of dinners with the Hopkins and holidays with their grown children and nights alone in a house that was too big for one person. I didn't date. Couldn't imagine being with anyone else. Pennsylvania law required 7 years before I could have Vera declared dead, and even if I could, what was the point? I was 36 years old, still married to a ghost, still waiting for closure that might never come. But I was alive, I was stable, I was even in my own way content. And then one warm June evening, just before the end of the school year, my doorbell rang. 2 people in business casual stood on my porch, a man and a woman, both carrying credentials. "Mr. David Dare?" the woman asked. "That's me. I'm Deputy Marshal Simpson. This is Deputy Marshal Wallach. We're with the U.S. Marshals Service." She paused. "May we come in? We have some information about your wife." My heart stopped. I led them to the living room on autopilot, offered water. They declined. We sat them on the couch, me in the armchair across from them, my hands gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles went white. "Is she dead?" I asked. "Did you find her body?" Marshal Simpson, the woman, exchanged a glance with her partner. "Mr. Dare, before we begin, I need to tell you that what we're about to share is going to be difficult to hear. We owe you a significant apology. The Marshal's Service made some serious errors 5 years ago, and you suffered because of them. Just tell me, please." She took a deep breath. 5 years ago, the Marshal's Service placed a man named Richard Wilson into the Witness Security Program. He was a whistleblower who had exposed a massive fraud at a defense contractor. His life was in danger. We relocated him with a new identity. I nodded slowly. I knew about Richard. Vera had worked with him. "Your wife, Mr. Dare?" "Your wife went with him, voluntarily." The words didn't make sense. I heard them, but my brain refused to process them. "What?" "Richard Wilson insisted that Vera accompany him into witness protection." She agreed. They've been living together in Portland, Oregon for the past 5 years under assumed identities. "That's not possible." "I'm afraid it is. We have documentation. Your wife was never kidnapped. She chose to disappear." I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. She left me. She's been alive this whole time." "Yes, and we should have informed you immediately. Your wife prepared a package of documents to be delivered to you once she was safely relocated. Divorce papers, property transfers, a letter explaining her decision. That package was supposed to reach you within weeks of her departure. I never received anything." "We know. The agent responsible for delivering it left the service shortly after your wife's relocation. The file was misplaced. We only discovered it recently when we were reviewing your wife's case for other reasons." "Other reasons?" Marshal Simpson's face grew somber. "Mr. Dare, I'm sorry to tell you that your wife is dead. She was killed 2 months ago during a home invasion in Portland. Richard Wilson was also killed. Dead. Vera was dead, but she'd been alive. For 5 years, she'd been alive, and she'd chosen to stay away. I couldn't decide if I wanted to scream or cry or laugh at the absurdity of it all. The home invasion, I finally said. Was it connected to the whistleblower case? No, random violence. The perpetrators have been apprehended. They were looking for easy targets, had no idea who Richard Wilson really was. Simpson paused. Your wife survived the initial attack but was severely injured. She was in a coma for 35 days before she passed. 35 days. She'd been dying in a hospital across the country, and I hadn't known. Hadn't been able to say goodbye. Why are you telling me this now, after all this time? Simpson reached into her folder and pulled out a thick accordion file. Because of this. And because you have a decision to make. She set the file on the coffee table between us. What decision? Mr. Dare, you have a daughter. I stared at her. That's not possible. Vera and I never had children. Your wife was pregnant when she entered witness protection. She gave birth approximately 9 months after her disappearance, a girl. She named her Violet. Pregnant. Vera had been pregnant. Those last weeks when we were trying for a baby, she'd already conceived, and she'd taken my child and disappeared. The child is 4.5 years old now, Simpson continued. Your wife had a DNA test conducted shortly after the birth. She was concerned about paternity, wanted to confirm whether the child was yours or Richard's. And the test confirmed that you are Violet's biological father. I couldn't breathe. There's more. Your wife and Richard had a son together 2 years after relocating. His name is Samuel. He's 2 years old. Why are you telling me about Richard's son? Simpson pulled a document from the file. Because in her will, your wife named you as the guardian of both children. Not just your biological daughter, both of them. I took the paper, read it 3 times. The words refused to make sense. She wants me to raise Richard's kid. She wants you to raise both children together. She was very specific about that. Simpson's voice softened. Mr. Dare, your wife left extensive documentation about her wishes. She also set up a trust fund for the children, over $100 million, primarily from Richard Wilson's whistleblower payout. $100 million. I set down the paper before I dropped it. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. There's more. Your wife specified that if you agree to take custody of both children, you would receive a personal bequest of $5 million. She also left instructions about a necklace. She wanted it held in trust for Violet until her wedding day. The necklace. The little heart pendant I'd bought for $20 at that clearance jewelry store. She'd kept it all these years. Something inside me cracked. Why me? I asked. She left me. She chose someone else. Why would she trust me with her children? Simpson looked at me with something like sympathy. There's a letter in that file. Perhaps it will explain. I looked at the accordion file like it was a bomb, which, in a way, it was. There's one more thing you need to understand, Wallach spoke up for the first time. Your marriage to Mrs. Dare was never legally terminated. She prepared divorce papers but never filed them. Technically, you're still her husband. We're still her husband, he corrected. Which means Violet is legally your daughter already. Samuel is more complicated, but given the circumstances and your wife's clearly stated wishes, the adoption process would be expedited. And if I say no? Then both children will enter the foster care system. The words hit me like a physical blow. Foster care. The system that had nearly destroyed me. The system that had broken Vera so thoroughly she could never truly love anyone. Vera knew what foster care did to children. She knew. And she'd named me as guardian anyway, knowing that I would never, could never, let her children go through what we had gone through. She'd trapped me. No, she'd trusted me. When can I meet them? The federal courthouse in Philadelphia was cold and sterile, all marble floors and echoing footsteps. I sat in a waiting room with institutional furniture and fluorescent lights, waiting to meet my daughter for the first time. My daughter, I still couldn't quite believe it. The door opened. A social worker entered, holding the hands of 2 small children. The girl was 4.5. She had Vera's eyes, that same wary, watchful look I'd seen in the biology lab all those years ago. But her hair was lighter, more like mine. She was dressed in a purple dress that looked brand new, probably bought for this occasion. The boy was 2, chubby cheeks, dark curly hair. He looked nothing like me and everything like someone I'd never met, Richard's son. Both children looked terrified. I got down on one knee to put myself at their eye level. Hi, I said. I'm Davy. The girls stared at me. The boy started to cry. It's okay, I said softly. I know this is scary. I know everything's been confusing, but I'm here to take care of you now. "Are you my daddy?" the girl asked. Her voice was tiny, uncertain. "Yes, Violet, I'm your daddy." Mommy said I had a daddy somewhere else. She showed me pictures. My throat tightened. She did. She said you were a good man. She said you'd take care of us if anything happened. I blinked back tears. She was right. I will. I promise. Violet studied me for a long moment with those Vera eyes. Then she nodded once and took my hand. Samuel was still crying. I picked him up, awkwardly at first. It had been a long time since I'd held a small child, and he buried his face in my shoulder. "It's okay, buddy," I murmured. "I've got you. I've got both of you." The first weeks were chaos. I'd never been a parent. Never changed a diaper, never dealt with tantrums, never navigated bedtime routines or picky eating or the 1,000 daily crises that come with small children. The Hopkins showed up within hours of my bringing the kids home. Mrs. H took one look at my overwhelmed face and immediately started making lists. Pediatricians, daycares, child-proofing supplies, everything a new parent might need. Gunny built a jungle gym in the backyard. He said it was for the kids. I'm pretty sure he just wanted an excuse to do some carpentry. Samuel adapted quickly. He was young enough that the transition felt more like an adventure than a trauma. Within a week, he was following me around the house, calling me Dada in his baby voice. Violet was harder. She remembered Vera, remembered Daddy Richard. She was polite to me, painfully polite, but there was a wall up. The same wall her mother had built. The same wall I recognized from my own childhood. I didn't push, just tried to be present, read her stories at night, made her favorite foods when she'd tell me what they were, let her set the pace. After 3 weeks of trying to juggle 2 small children and a full-time job, I realized I needed help. The $5 million from Vera's estate had cleared. For the first time in my life, I had real money. It felt strange. Wrong, almost. Blood money from a wife who had abandoned me. But it was also practical. And if there was one thing I'd learned from Vera, it was the value of practical thinking. I hired Maria. She was a 53-year-old Mexican immigrant recommended by one of Mrs. H's church friends. She'd raised 4 children of her own and had been working as a nanny for wealthy families in the main-line suburbs for 20 years. From the first day, she was perfect. "Hola, Mija," she said to Violet, crouching down to her level. "I'm Maria. I'm going to help your daddy take care of you." Violet, who had been suspicious of every new adult in her life, looked at Maria's warm smile and seemed to relax. "Do you like to cook?" Maria asked. "Mommy used to let me help make cookies." "Then we'll make cookies together. Would you like that?" Violet nodded. Within a week, Maria was abuela to both kids. She filled the house with the smell of homemade tortillas and the sound of Spanish lullabies. She taught the children about her culture, her language, her traditions. She became family. I'd never be able to repay her for that. The breakthrough with Violet came about a month after she arrived. I was making dinner spaghetti, one of the few things I could cook reliably, when I felt a tug on my pants leg. Violet was standing there looking up at me with Vera's eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart, anything." "Are you really my daddy, my real daddy?" I turned off the stove and knelt down to face her. "Yes, Violet, your mommy and we made you together." Before she went away, "Then why didn't you come find us?" The question hit me like a knife to the chest. "I didn't know where you were, baby. Nobody told me. I didn't even know you existed until a few weeks ago." Her little brow furrowed. "Mommy didn't tell you?" "No, she didn't. But she talked about you. She said you were brave. She said you saved people in a war." She said, Violet paused, trying to remember. "She said if anything bad happened, you would take care of us, that you were the only person she trusted to do it." I felt tears welling up. "She said that?" Violet nodded solemnly. "She said you loved her more than anyone ever had, and she was sorry she couldn't love you back the same way." I pulled my daughter into a hug before she could see me cry. "I love you, Violet," I whispered. "I know we just met, but I love you, and I'm going to take care of you and Samuel forever, I promise." Small arms wrapped around my neck. "I love you too, Daddy." It was the first time she'd called me that. That night after the kids were asleep, I finally opened the accordion file. I'd been avoiding it for weeks, afraid of what I'd find, afraid of what Vera had to say, but it was time. I found the letter she'd written sealed in an envelope with my name on it in her careful handwriting. I opened it, read it again. "Dear Davy, by the time you receive this letter, I'll have disappeared." I'm sorry to do this to you, but I've attempted to make the process of dealing with my leaving as easy as possible. The letter went on for 3 pages. Vera explained her decision, explained her reasoning, explained the fear that had driven her since childhood, the overwhelming need for security that I could never provide, no matter how much I loved her. I know I'm hurting you. For that, I can only express my deepest regret. You loved me unconditionally. I will always treasure that. I wish I could have done the same for you. I'm self-aware enough to recognize that I've never loved anyone. I'm not sure I have the capacity to love after all those years in the foster care system. I know I'd never experienced love until I met you, except perhaps from a mother I have no memory of. You were much stronger than I was because you survived the system with your capacity to love intact. I didn't. Perhaps the difference between us was a result of Gunny and Mrs. H's time with you, or perhaps it is just that you are the best man I've ever known. I set down the letter and wept. Not for myself, not for the marriage I'd lost or the years I'd spent wondering. I wept for Vera, for the little girl who'd been broken by a system that was supposed to protect her, for the woman who'd never learned how to love because no one had ever shown her how. She'd been running her whole life, running from poverty, running from insecurity, running from the terror of being abandoned again. In the end, she'd run right into the thing she feared most. And now she was gone. I couldn't forgive her, not completely. Maybe not ever, but I understood her. And understanding I was learning was its own form of peace. The summer after I got the kids, we took a vacation, 2 weeks in Ocean City, New Jersey. Maria came along to help, and I gave her plenty of time off to enjoy herself while I built sandcastles with Violet and chased Samuel through the shallow waves. It was the first time I'd felt like a real family in years. Maybe ever. When we got home, there was a moving truck in front of the house next door. The old couple who'd lived there, the Hendersons who'd helped clean my house after Gunny dragged me out of my pit, had finally moved to Texas to be near their daughter. I'd known they were planning to sell, but I hadn't realized it would happen so fast. "Daddy, look!" Violet pointed at a small figure in the next yard, a boy maybe her age playing with a toy truck. "Can I go say hi?" "Sure, sweetheart, but be polite." She ran off. I watched her approach the boy, watched them exchange a few words, watched them start playing together like they'd known each other forever. Kids are amazing that way. I walked over to introduce myself. The front door of the house was open, and I could hear someone moving around inside. I knocked on the frame. "Hello. I'm your neighbor from next door. Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." A woman appeared in the doorway. She was covered in paint, blue streaks on her jeans, white splotches in her dark hair, a smear across one cheek. She was wearing an old t-shirt that had seen better days and no makeup whatsoever. She was also beautiful. Even through the mess, I could see it. "Oh, hi." She wiped her hands on her already ruined jeans and extended one toward me. "Sorry, I'm a disaster. I'm painting my son's room. I'm Carol Schick." "Davy Dare." I shook her hand. "That your boy out there with my daughter? Teddy, he's 5, yours. Violet, she's almost 5, and I've got a son too, Samuel. He's with my housekeeper right now." "Housekeeper, fancy." She said it with a smile, teasing rather than judgmental. "Not as fancy as it sounds. She's more like a grandmother to them. I'm a single dad. I need all the help I can get." "Single dad?" Something flickered across her face. "I'm a single mom, well, widow technically." "I'm sorry." "Thanks, it was 2 years ago. He was a helicopter pilot. Iraq." "I'm sorry," I said again, meaning it more deeply this time. "I was in Afghanistan, Marines. You were military, long time ago." We stood there for a moment, 2 strangers with more in common than we'd expected. "Would your kids like to come over?" I asked. "We have a jungle gym in the backyard. My foster father built it. Teddy would love that." She hesitated. "I should warn you, I'm probably going to be a terrible neighbor for the next few weeks. Unpacking, painting, trying to figure out where everything goes. I moved here to be closer to my parents. They help with Teddy. No judgment, and if you need anything, help with boxes, someone to watch Teddy while you unpack, just ask." She smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "I might take you up on that." Over the next few months, Carol and I became friends. It started with the kids. Teddy and Violet were inseparable from day one, same age, same classroom at school, same fascination with dinosaurs and superheroes. They spent most of their free time at my house. We had the jungle gym, or at hers. She had the superior snack collection. Then it became about convenience. Carol worked late one evening a week at the library, so I'd watch Teddy. When I had parent-teacher conferences, she'd take my kids. We carpooled to school events. We shared babysitters. Somewhere along the way, it became something more. I started noticing things about her. The way she laughed, full-bodied, unrestrained, nothing like Vera's careful smiles. The way she was with the kids, patient and playful and completely present. The way she looked at me sometimes, when she thought I wasn't watching. I started looking forward to our weekend evenings, when we'd sit on my back porch with glasses of wine while the kids played in the yard. I started finding excuses to go over to her house. A leaky faucet that needed fixing, a shelf that needed mounting, anything to spend more time with her. But I didn't act on it. I'd been burned once. Badly. The idea of opening myself up again, of trusting someone that completely terrified me. And Carol had her own wounds. She still wore her wedding ring. Still had photos of her husband all over the house. Still got quiet sometimes when something reminded her of him. We were both broken. Maybe we were too broken to try. It was December, almost Christmas, when I finally worked up the courage. I was walking Teddy home after a play date. Carol opened the door looking different. She'd come from work, was still in her professional clothes, a blouse that showed just a hint of cleavage, tailored pants that flattered her figure. Her hair was up in a bun. She had reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Something stirred in me that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Hey," she said, "how was he?" "Perfect angel, as always." "They're already planning their Christmas lists together," she laughed. "Lord help us." I stood there on her porch trying to find the words. "Carol." "Yes. Would you, I mean if you're not busy, would you like to go out sometime with me, like on a date?" Smooth, Davy, real smooth, but Carol didn't seem to mind. A slow smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, "it's about time." "What, Davy, I've been waiting for you to ask for MO and THS. I was going to give you until Christmas, and if you hadn't made a move by then, I was going to ask you myself." I felt my face go red. "You were?" "Yes, you're sweet and you're good with your kids and you're not hard to look at." She grinned. "Plus, I've caught you checking out my rear end at least a dozen times." "Don't think I haven't noticed." I wasn't. "You were, it's fine, I've been checking out yours too." I laughed. For the first time in what felt like years, I genuinely laughed. "So that's a yes." "That's a yes. When were you thinking?" "Saturday night, I'll ask Maria to watch all 3 kids, dinner and a movie." "Perfect, pick me up at 6. Our first date was everything I'd hoped for and more. Dinner at a little Italian place I'd been wanting to try. A movie at the AMC Theater in King of Prussia, holding hands in the dark. A kiss goodnight that left me dizzy. It was so different from Vera. With Vera, everything had been cautious, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. With Carol, it was easy, natural. Like we'd known each other forever. Over the following weeks, we fell into a rhythm. Dates when we could arrange childcare, family dinners when we couldn't. Stolen moments when the kids were distracted. We took things slow, we both had too much at stake to rush. But by spring, it was obvious to everyone that we were serious. Violet asked if Carol was going to be her new mommy. Teddy asked if I was going to be his new daddy. Maria just smiled and started setting extra places at the table without being asked. And Gunny, when I finally brought Carol to meet him and Mrs. H, pulled me aside afterward. "She's good for you," he said. "Don't screw it up." "I'll try not to." "I mean it. You've been through hell, son. You deserve someone who loves you the way you love them." He put a hand on my shoulder. "She looks at you the same way you look at her. That's rare. Don't take it for granted." "I won't," I promised. "I've learned that lesson."